Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre. Today on the show, Lars Iyer, philosopher and author of Nietzsche and the Burbs. Now, this book is hilarious, but I have to say it caused me some mild PTSD because it did feel like Lars wrote my biography. This book is about alienated teens ready to graduate into what seems like an unbearable life in a bland middle-class suburb. And the only light at the end of the tunnel is music, more specifically heavy metal, including all the subgenres like doom metal and stoner metal and whatever else metal, but also a little bit of reggae, a little bit of disco there as well. And so the set today, before we introduce our guest, I would like the camera to show us a little bit of the set, because the set built by Ruby reflects these themes. We're obviously in a classroom because Lars teaches philosophy. We'll talk about that too. Now the classroom, if the camera zooms up, you will see that on top of the building here is the Übermensch. Now, what the Übermensch is, we will also learn. I mean, that's why we invited not only an author, but also a lecturer. We want to learn something. And the classroom with the Übermensch on top is surrounded by shiny, happy people living in nice houses. They all look the same so that there's no jealousy. There's a Tesco. People outside of England don't know what a Tesco is. So the British audience, please enlighten us. There are dogs, there are bikes. And as you notice, a little bit behind the facade of the suburbs is a rehearsal room, a garage, a rusty garage, where our friends that are the main protagonists in Lars's book rehearse with their band. And they are honing their skills, like I said, in metal, in reggae, possibly disco. There's Murph on the marimba. There's in the back of the garage is Bill Trim on drums. There's Chandra. She's blue. She has a lot of arms and a little bit Krishna-like, I guess. Chandra is on guitar. Not she, actually he. Well, we don't know. Paula is on bass, and Nietzsche. Nietzsche is on vocals. He's dancing around, and if you don't know who Nietzsche is, again, this is going to be very educational, I think, today. Also, we completely actually forgot to bring in Art, which I just realized. So Art is AWOL, but Art will come back because Art is also an important player in this band. He plays the sampler basically. And in the back of Nietzsche, you see a little Easter egg here that I threw in. It's a recording, a VHS recording of a metal band playing in a suburb of Munich. And what that band is all about, maybe we'll hear about that as well. But now I would like the camera to please come back to us in the classroom, and I would like to introduce Lars Iyer, who is sitting here with me. Lars, thank you so much for coming into this strange world. But I guess, I mean, you're a philosopher, so maybe there's nothing that can make you weird you out.
Well, thank you, Draxtor. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks everyone for coming, and thank you to Ruby Strawberry and Silas for designing this amazing environment, which reminds me of my suburban past.
Yeah, and I want to get into like what's your connection with the Burbs? I have also a question for later. Why always the Burbs? Why, what I mean is growing up as a teenager in an urban environment so much better? Well, we'll get to that later. The avatar that you requested was I think you said something like a realistic head, but then surrounded by chaos. What went through your mind when you requested this avatar?
Well, for me, the chaos is something which resonates very well with the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, and the novel is based loosely on Nietzsche's life, very, very loosely actually, but loosely on Nietzsche's life. And one of the things that characterizes Nietzsche's thought is that he argues that what is real is in a constant state of flux, without purpose or goal, where process is primary, not stable things, not forms. What's primary for Nietzsche is a chaotic field. And that's what I wanted to capture in my avatar, this idea of a chaotic field from which a head emerges.
And you know what? I should have told you that you are in Second Life where chaos reigns every day. You don't have to symbolize that on top of, I mean, that's like putting another like can of powder sugar on an already pretty sugary cake. Aha. So this actually, I mean, like I said, I mean, I enjoyed this book so much on so many levels. This is a milieu that I'm completely familiar with. It really threw me back. Now, but I want to ask you Nietzsche and the Burbs. So when people, who read, or maybe people who not read, and actually I recommended this book to my 17-year-old too. I say, you really got to read this. This is amazing. Uh, the question is, can people read this? Can people enjoy it without having a philosophy degree in philosophy or a degree in Norwegian heavy metal history? That is the
Well,
question.
the novel is full of allusions to all kinds of things. There's lots of allusions to soap operas, teen dramas of all kinds, to contemporary music. And there's so many angles of approach when it comes to this novel. There's no requirement to have any background whatsoever in philosophy. You might come to this novel as someone interested in music. You might come to it as someone interested in teen films, teen soap operas, because it's full of references. All the names of the characters pretty much come from some teen drama or another. And what I actually do is dramatize situations in the novel that are familiar to all of us from, I don't know if anyone here has seen Euphoria, this recent TV program, absolutely wonderful from HBO. These kinds of dramas are archetypal, in our culture. And that's what I wanted to work with in this novel. So no requirement of philosophy whatsoever is needed.
And because these dramas, and also one other film factors in big, Melancholia, Lars von Trier's Melancholia, the movie. I mean, this is they reference it constantly. And these films or these TV shows in popular culture, I mean, they build on philosophical themes. And as a matter of fact, the teen protagonists, they seem to me as pretty sophisticated philosophers actually themselves. I mean, is maybe everybody, I mean, I felt like when I was reading this, I was like, when I was 12 and sitting there looking at the train going into into the city center and looking at it going by, go like, is this it? I mean, looking back, maybe I was more of a philosopher than when I studied sociology in college. Is
Young people,
a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old really pondering these questions like day and night.
this is adolescence to me, is that moment of questioning. And that can stretch back to being 12, 11 or 12, 13, 14. My characters are mostly 17 and 18. But this is a period in life where everything comes into question. The things that you formerly regarded to be stable and secure become insecure, and you start seeing in your parents, you see flaws, you see difficulties in the way they behave. You start seeing in politics in general. There are serious issues in the world, and for my characters, there are issues about climate change, about financial catastrophe, and these teens are full of these philosophical questions of a very inchoate kind. But nevertheless, this is what nurtures philosophy. These kinds of questions of meaning and purpose and value. This is the lifeblood of philosophy.
I'm actually trying to bring up one of my slides, and it's not loading right now. Just give me 1 second, because there is an exchange, and we'll have you read as well. But there's an exchange that I found fantastic. I mean, there's many. Matter of fact, the camera could actually go towards the back of the room a little bit and look at. We just plastered some of the excerpts there on the wall, and there's one scene where the crew goes to the two dads of a girl named Noelle, and these seem pretty cool dudes. And Silver and Cecil are the two dads. They're married, and Noelle is their daughter, and Silver goes to the protagonist and asks them what the biggest issue is that faces their generation. And I should say that Nietzsche is the guy who looks like Nietzsche. The kid comes to this suburb from a private school. So he comes in and he immediately connects with the others, and then they form the band and so on and so forth. But in this exchange here, I'm still trying to bring up the slide. Um, he the father, Sylvier, goes and says, "What is the biggest issue that faces your generation? I so rarely meet intelligent young people." And then Chandra, who narrates the story, says, "We wonder aloud. Climate change, capitalism, mass stupidity, corporate power, debt, consumerism." Nietzsche says, "Nihilism." "Oh, nihilism," Sylvia nods. "And what do you mean by that?" "The center doesn't hold," Paula says. "The way up is the way down," Art says. "The uncanniest guest knocks at the door," Merv says. "Everything is possible, and yet nothing is," I say. "All is permitted, and yet again nothing," Art says. "Do you hear these young people, Cecil?" He talks to his husband, who's in the other end of the room. Sylvia says, "These young people are nihilists." Cecil cups a hand to his ear. "Nihilists!" Sylvia shouts over the party noise. "Oh, I thought you said they were antichrists," Cecil says. "How disappointing." So just a little taste here of this. I mean, the writing is just your writing just really is quite superb. Uh, Give us a little biographical sketch of Nietzsche. Some of the main themes. The Übermensch. People also probably know Also sprach Zarathustra. Well, they probably haven't read the book. Uh, Neither have I, by the way. But I studied at the Richard Strauss Conservatory, and he wrote a musical piece. But anyway, why did you then pick Nietzsche? What was his significance? Could you have picked another philosopher to tie this in with this story?
Well, as I was saying earlier, one of the things that characterizes Nietzsche's thought, he doesn't think that there's a stable world out there that really exists. What's important is process, is chaos. Human beings can't bear this chaos. And what we try to do as human beings is to establish horizons within which we can live, within which a community can live. And these horizons are lies in a certain way, because they help us conceal chaos from ourselves. But for Nietzsche, lies can be more important than the truth,
Mhm.
because it helps us to flourish. We need these horizons because reality is too much for us to bear. The lack of real purpose, the lack of real goals, the fact that meaning isn't simply given. This is too much for us to cope with. And
Mhm.
for Nietzsche, and this is why it's really important in my work, in this novel, is that for Nietzsche, music is absolutely essential, because what music can do is to compose chaos into order. What music can do is to lay out horizons in which human beings can live. And the reason why it can do that for Nietzsche is because music is able to operate directly on our bodies, on the
Mhm.
complex, the multiplicity of passions that each of us is. And here's the crucial point for Nietzsche. We are not primarily minds or souls. We're complexes of passions. We're full of these deep drives and impulses that work in us, they work through us. And these are manifestations of chaos which have to be shaped, which have to be organized if we're to find life bearable. And the fundamental drama in Nietzsche and the Burbs, the novel, is this attempt to find a form in which chaos is something which can at once make our lives more lively and more exciting than they might be in the suburbs, but would also be regulated, calmed, such that they don't pose any danger to us psychically. Because my central character, Nietzsche, is someone who suffers from mental illness, like the
Right.
real Nietzsche. And, he's someone who feels very threatened and worried by chaos.
Is the mother now see now I'm already getting into the weeds because it's so fascinating. We need to have this show like 3 hours. I know my producers in the back, they go like, "No, we don't have, we have meetings, we have meetings." The mother of the Nietzsche in your book is also really interesting character. She's very controlling and very concerned about Nietzsche, the kid in your book, wants to protect him. Was that also the relationship of the real Nietzsche with his mother?
Yeah, I mean, the historical Nietzsche, his mother was someone very protective of him. She's very close to him. And Nietzsche's father died when he was really quite young. His father was a priest, pastor, I suppose you'd call it, actually. And Nietzsche's father was a man from a pietist background. a very austere religious man. His mother had to bring up the young Nietzsche along with his sister, and she had a very powerful influence on him. Nietzsche, in his later thought, became very misogynistic. It's a very unfortunate aspect of his work.
Mm.
There's a real misogyny in there, and he directs a lot of ire towards his mother and also to his sister. And Nietzsche's sister was someone who, in real life, Nietzsche's sister became fascist. She became drawn to
That
Hitler and
is,
Mussolini.
I'm sorry, this is so interesting because what I just remember is, of course, the association through the Nazis, because they loved the interpretation, which was essentially Nietzsche's sister's interpretation. The Nazis loved this kind of stuff, and I always grew up with thinking, Nietzsche must have been sort of an ultra nationalist, but as a matter of fact, his sister was. After he passed away at a fairly early age, she was interpreting all this stuff and was pushing it into that direction, right? And that's how he became sort of this beloved poster child for all the European fascists.
Sure, I mean, Nietzsche lost his sanity at the age of 44, and he lived to the age of, he lived like 10 years or 12 years to 1900, and he was put into his mother's and sister's care. They looked after him. And what his sister did in particular was to exploit this invalid. Nietzsche wasn't very famous while he was sane, but in his years of madness, his work became circulated throughout Europe, and he became more renowned philosophically. And indeed, people came to pay pilgrimage to Nietzsche. Nietzsche was bedridden for most of the last years of his life. And Nietzsche's sister exploited this. He exploited his fame, and she lived from his fame, and she actually edited Nietzsche's works. And some of Nietzsche's works, she took out the references to herself and her mother, because Nietzsche writes directly against his sister and his mother in some of his writings extraordinarily.
That is so funny. I mean, the way you put this into the suburban context of the here and now is just absolutely hilarious. And then, I mean, I really don't want to spoil it because also the gig, the band Nietzsche and the Burbs, they do play one gig. It doesn't go very well. It's absolutely hilarious. And again, this is sorry, it's not about me, but my PTSD kicked in there because the first gig with my band when we were 15, 16, it was very similar actually. And the sister also in the book is sort of you don't make her an ultra nationalist fascist, but you make her basically a corporatist, right? That kind of sells that kind of ethos and that kind of goals to the kids. She's kind of goes into the classroom and tells them, business is awesome, I
That's
guess.
right. That's right. Now, the sister, you see, I portrayed her as someone who's a familiar type in our world, someone who's full of all the corporate lingo. And the sister is trying to recruit these young people into the firms of the area, because the area in which they live is a prosperous part of the UK. There are a lot of big firms there to work in. And she works in recruitment. So she's trying to recruit these young people to work in financial and business firms, the pharma bio industries, the great retail firms, and above all, the tech companies. There's loads of tech companies in the Thames Valley where the novel is set. So she's working on behalf of the big multinational businesses, trying to bring in these young people to try and to feed this brain economy of software engineers, telecoms people, commercial staff. And this is exactly the world that the friends of the novel, these teens, these school children, want to resist at all costs. What they want
Right,
to
because
avoid is
everybody
business.
pushes them into this. I mean, this is also I can relate to this as a father of a teenager. I mean, this is an economic anxiety that is being pushed by the middle class into these kids. You gotta don't waste time. Actually, a quick aside. I mean, I talked to the wonderful orchestra director at my son's school, and he was lamenting. He knows I'm a musician. He says, I said, well, how is it going? He says, well, the kids, the parents don't send their kids to the orchestra anymore, and they have a great program. They get free instruments, everything. And I said, why do you think that is? And he goes like, well, I think parents, middle class parents, they're so motivated by economic anxiety that they think if the kids spend an hour, 2 hours at the orchestra, that's 2 hours that they should study calculus or apply for a business school or something like that. So and that plays in I mean this is sort of the undercurrent of your book all the way through.
Absolutely. These are the great ills of our age. We live in a time where there's an emphasis on these generic business skills at the expense of virtually anything else. for me, our time is a time of management, where human beings are managed like lab rats. You know,
Mm.
we're treated like animals. You know, like what these satellites that fly through the sky and can control stock in these vast farms, and human beings are treated in a similar way. So my great worry is the rise of technocracy, which is the total control of human beings using psychological techniques. And this is a really huge aspect of contemporary life, which is very hard to break away from, especially for young people who are conditioned by educational institutions, by their parents, by universities, and so on.
I think I can scrap this question that I have for later, which is how, Lars, did you feel qualified to talk about this generation of young people while you are kind of roughly in my generation? And then I answered this question myself in my head, which is basically nothing much has changed. It's only gotten basically worse. Is that what's happening?
I think that's probably right. You know, I come into contact with a lot of young people as a university lecturer, so
Yeah,
I
you
work with
also
young
lecture, so
people.
you are really like in contact also with this generation. Yeah.
That's right. So we have interesting conversations. I don't work in philosophy anymore, but I used to work in philosophy. And one of the things we did in philosophy, we had very open-ended sessions where students were encouraged to talk about their lives, about their thoughts. So I actually got to know the students very well. I think I had a sense of what was worrying them, what concerned them. And they always felt torn between a very conventional life and a more adventurous one, that they wanted to escape. They weren't quite sure how to escape from the lives that were mapped out for them.
Yeah. Yeah. A few comments here. Jerry McNally mentions Nietzsche, Wagner. Of course, that's also something that is sort of in the back of my mind always. What is, who of these people? Also, I actually researched a little bit Richard Strauss, but we're getting totally into the weeds. It's interesting how these people are perceived as nefarious bad actors in terms of their uh, you know right-wing views, or perceived as such, at least for my part, with my sort of half-baked knowledge. um, Little Brett says she found some information about church burnings. What do church burnings have to do with your book, Lars? I'm not going to spoil it, but it's hilarious in its detail of heavy metal subculture. Ruby asked a very good question: can love heal my nihilism? That is interesting because it seems that you kind of suggest that there's one character, Paula, in the book, the bass player. She's very cynical, and then she actually finds someone who she is romantically involved with, and for a little while, she seems to be she has lost her sarcasm.
That's exactly right.
What are
You
you
know,
trying to say with that, Lars? Is that like a temporary thing, or can it? The potential is there still.
the potential is there, but actually, you know, there's certainly romantic love in the novel. It's a very important part of the novel. It's very significant. My character Nietzsche, he has a relationship of sorts, and of course, my character Paula does as well. And when she speaks of her love for her girlfriend, it's deliberately, you know, it breaks from the rest of her character. You know, she's not
Hmm.
cynical for a moment. She's very open and very giving. But I would say what the novel does ultimately is celebrate friendship. And even
Hmm.
though these characters live in a really kind of boring place, which we might all be able to relate to, what's really crucial for them is the fact that they're friends. They're friends with one another. They can
Yes.
share their problems, and that's why for me, you know, all the stuff that all their complaints are fine, but what's really important here is the fact they can complain to one another. They have someone to listen to. So
Yeah.
misery loves company, and these characters have company. And what they're worried about actually is in later life, will they have friendships like these friendships? Will they seem so close? When I look back on my suburban life, I remember the friends I had and the fun we had. Okay, so school was dull, the suburbs were kind of boring, but we had enormous fun of a kind I've never had since.
Right. Right. That is something that makes me also really sad, as they are so fearfully looking into the future and constantly uh, ask themselves, will it be like this? Um, let's do a little reading. If you're just tuning in, this is the Second Life Book Club with Lars Iyer. The book is There's many books actually. We're going to touch on the Spurious trilogy as well, but the main course is Nietzsche and the Burbs, and it's absolutely exquisite, absolutely awesome. Now, Ruby, could you bring up the book display? We have a little book here on the stand, and if Lars, if I can ask you to stand up, and Ruby, please bring the book display such that Lars can read from it. There we go.
Okay, here I
Perfect.
come.
Yeah, you can just stand there. Perfect.
Yep,
See the
that's
book.
lovely.
Yeah,
Great.
the book display moves to you. I mean, this is, we spare no expense here.
Fantastic.
Um, and I think you're reading a little bit of them, basically an outing here. They're bored, and what are they doing? They're going to kind of a mall.
Yeah, so this is an excerpt from the novel, which hasn't got too much swearing in. I was told to avoid having too much swearing. There's a lot of swearing in the novel. This
There's
is
a lot of swearing. That's a good sales point, Lars. Let's repeat this. There's a lot of swearing, guys. Let's remind folks. It's not boring. It's not boring philosophy. There's a lot of F words and other words. It's wonderful. And Asda, yeah, Asda. I didn't know what Asda was. What is Asda?
As a supermarket which is owned by Walmart. So just think
Ah,
Walmart. So
okay.
that's actually, people comment on this who know the area I'm depicting. They'll say, Asda's not in Wokingham. Well, Asda stands in for Walmart and for these huge corporations which have such a horrific effect on life worldwide. So I have a horror of Asda. Now, my characters at this point in the novel are interested in doing suburban research. They're convinced by Nietzsche, this guy who's arrived from another school, from a fee-paying school. They're convinced by Nietzsche that something's interesting. There's something interesting to think about in the suburbs. So my characters, they venture on these suburban research trips, a kind of psychogeography. And at this point in the novel, my characters go off to explore Asda. Now, Asda's a really banal, dreary supermarket, and that's all you need to know.
I actually, sorry.
Go on, yeah.
Why not Tesco? What's the God damn it? I did I say damn it? Can I say damn it on the air? God is dead. God is dead. So I can say God damn it. But no. But why not Tesco? Real quick. Why Asda?
Because Asda, they work like a company store in the USA.
Okay.
People work at Asda. They live in a town where everyone works for Asda. Sorry, they work for Walmart. They live in a town where everyone works for Walmart, and their wages they spend in Walmart.
I see.
And this homogeneity, when I read about Walmart in the USA, is pretty horrifying. Now we haven't got. We're not exactly the same as that over here in the UK, but we're heading in that direction. It's horrifying. So that's why Asda is the enemy. Okay, so here are the characters. Off they go. Asda again. Paula says, can't we think of anywhere better? Haven't we got any imagination? We've got to do our suburban research somewhere, Art says. Agreement. Asda is a mockery of destinations. It doesn't deserve the name of destination. What could we possibly want from there? We've had enough snacks. God knows we're drowning in snacks. What then? The off-license shop-in-shop, its wooden floor, its wooden shelves, the bottles of spirits they never let us buy. No, Asda is not really our destination, we agree. We're after bigger game, Nietzschean game. We're walking to diagnose the problem of the suburbs. We're walking to overcome nihilism. Asda, reached by the underpass and along the concrete path. What could be worse? Asda, via the subway, beneath the roundabout and dual carriageway. What horror. Channeled walking, path-bound walking, no permitted deviations. In lockstep to Asda, inevitably to Asda. Turn back, retreat, but we must go on. Borne forward by fatality, by a concrete fatality. We have an appointment with Asda. What must be, must be. Thick white clouds, too much light, too much sky. It's like a great blind eye, like the eye of a great blind God, watching everything, seeing nothing. Who threw us into this world? Who abandoned us here? Who can we blame? Who can we sue for criminal negligence? Has anyone ever won a lawsuit for nihilism? Has anyone ever been put on trial for nihilism? We should take the owners of Asda to the High Court for nihilism. We should take them to the European Supreme Court for nihilism. Such a narrow path to Asda, such a narrow way, passing Pogo and Rowley and nodding to Pogo and Rowley, passing Fife and Carmichael and nodding to Fife and Carmichael, passing Lizard and Mac the Knife, not nodding to Lizard and Mac the Knife, passing Binky and Diamanda, no question of nodding to Binky and Diamanda. We've never exchanged so much as a glance with Binky and Diamanda. Passing Bombproof. Surely we won't have to greet Bombproof. Surely it would be asking for it to greet Bombproof. Bombproof might fall into step with us. Bombproof might insinuate himself into our ranks and ruin our suburban research outing. Isn't the afternoon bad enough as it is? Isn't the trip to Asda already utter desperation? Bombproof bearing down on us. Bombproof readying himself to greet us. The inevitability of Bombproof, like the inevitability of Asda. Asda multiplied by Bombproof. Bombproof to the power of Asda. It's unendurable. Whooshing past Bombproof. Zooming past Bombproof. Bombproof dazed in our wake. Bombproof in a cloud of dust. It's just us on our suburban research outing.
And that's Lars Iyer reading from Nietzsche and the Burbs. And Bombproof, I guess, is that's the resident bully, right?
Well, he's the resident chew toy of the bullies. He's the guy who the bullies are kind of mean to.
Right. People are mentioning here, scrolling back, there's actually Nietzsche is in the front row here, and he said that his question was stolen from him. Can love heal nihilism? Nietzsche says, actually, that was my question, but my friend stole it. Your girlfriend, I guess. Ava says, Asda, the supermarket, cannot be brought to European court anymore because of Brexit. I guess so. Thank you, Lars, for reading. This was exquisite, and I would, if you would like to sit back down, that'd be
Sure.
great. And I'm going to read a quick one here that I threw up on the overhead because this ties in with this excursion excerpt that you just read. The kids, the friends, the crew, the clique, they often in their discussions, they seem to sort of try to one up each other in terms of who is more suffering. And then it's a question about, can they legitimately suffer if they're actually economically kind of okay? I mean, they're not totally poor. They're not being shot at. So I want to briefly read this excerpt here. They're hanging out with girls from another school here, and Art is one of the guys, and the girl Tana basically challenges him and says, what are you complaining about? She says, you've never been stabbed, have you? You've never been shot. And then Art says, we've been psychically shot and mentally stabbed. And then a little bit later, Art asks her, have you ever really wanted to die? No, Noelle says. Have you? Not yet, Art says. But we will. We're nearly there, I say. That's Chandra, the narrator. We nearly reached peak hatred. I'm actually supposed to be depressed, Noelle says. It's been diagnosed. I'm on Prozac. Everyone's on Prozac, I say. It's a con. Big Pharma bribes doctors to describe it. Depression is a chrysalis, Art says. It's a chance. It means you're busting through all the lies. It means you can't tolerate the fakeness. I bet you never had a real depression, have you? Noelle asks. We're going to, I say. We're ready, Art says. So there's just another really brilliantly written dialogue, Lars, where it just exemplifies the what is really occupying their minds. It's on the one hand a competition, who is suffering more, but then also at the same time the cognitive dissonance of knowing that I have some sort of economic security, what am I complaining about? And that's, I think, where really these bad feelings are coming from. And I think sometimes teachers actually, or administrators, exploit that. Right? I mean, I see this here in school when I talk to other parents. They say, the teacher stops. I don't want to. I'm always on the side of the teacher, but some teachers use that sort of as a way to motivate the kids. Pull yourself together, that kind of thing. And
Sure. Well, this is the idea. In our time, I was saying earlier, management for me, the management of our lives, the way we manage one another is a contemporary horror. And the way teachers manage their pupils is often to make them deny these feelings that they have, and these are important. These feelings are important reaction to the excessiveness of management. That people don't want to be managed. People don't want to be dominated in this way. And the way they manifest that desire to break out is through low moods of various kinds, or maybe aggressive moods of various kinds.
Mm-hmm. And these moods then are also being managed.
They're being managed. Yeah. In the novel, you see all the time, there's lots of images of life in the suburbs, and every part of life is managed. Even death is managed. They drive past a hospital and they discuss this idea of an end of life pathway. And every part of life, of course, your working life is managed, but also relationships are managed. And it's what we do instinctively pretty much nowadays. It's a way in which we understand ourselves. There's a very interesting contemporary German philosopher who writes in German. I think he's Korean. He's called Byung-Chul Han. And Byung-Chul Han, his surname is Han. Han has a series of very interesting books on how we exploit ourselves. No longer should we understand our relationship to the world around us as one of simple exploitation from other people. We actually exploit ourselves as well. We drive ourselves to work too hard. We manage ourselves, to think of ourselves in terms of our CV of useful transferable skills. So we actually exploit and alienate ourselves from ourselves. And some of these low moods or this aggression is a way in which that self wells back up and says, I don't want to be managed.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is a typical, and if you could type the name of the author that you mentioned in here, we're still trying to figure out a way in the book club that we don't lose that stuff. I usually copy and paste at the end into a Google Doc, and then I'll bring it back. Byung-Chul Han. Okay, fantastic.
Actually, I've got to get those. It's Byung and then Chul, and then it's Han.
Byung-Chul Han.
Han is his surname. Yeah, he's a very interesting writer. His books are only about 60 pages long. They're tiny in English and in German likewise. These are tiny little books, and they're very, very clearly written. So I recommend them, or any of them actually, to the audience here. He's a very interesting writer.
Fantastic. Somebody please cut and paste a link, please. That will be fantastic. We'll do another reading right now from the band practice, because that's also awesome. But of course, I have to ask you the most obvious question first. Philosophers, they seem to have all they have it all figured out, but they still don't have the solution. So what I'm sorry, Lars, this is the big question. What is the solution for this? For basically what is a complete lack of options to not self-fulfillment, but to reaching the potential. And I was just talking with someone a couple of days ago about a universal basic income, for example. We were discussing this, and there are some issues with it, and there's avenues to exploit this too. But one of the main arguments against universal basic income is always that if you give people enough to meet their economic security, yes, some will basically fulfill their potential, and the imagination will thrive, but a lot of them will just sit on the couch and do nothing. And my argument would be, I don't know if that's so much worse for society if a certain percentage just does nothing. That might be an acceptable loss, basically. So anyway, I had to think about that thing when I read your book as well.
Well, actually, there's a passage later in Nietzsche and the Burbs on universal basic income, where the characters are discussing the prospect of our world being full of these enormous corporations, a few private equity firms, and then a bunch of people who, because of automation and other things, are put on universal basic income.
Mm.
And the one of the worries for me here is the technocratic use of universal basic income.
Yes.
And there's interesting concepts like programmable money. I don't know if you've heard of these ideas, but some people are arguing that, okay, universal basic income will allow people just to subsist, just about, with maybe some gig, you talk about some gig work. But, as a commentator just said here, it's bread and circuses in many ways.
Yep.
But programmable money means that you'll only be able to spend your money on certain things, that you'll have an income that you'll spend part of it at Walmart on particular kinds of food. This is going to be a pretty grim way of living, a pretty tough form of living, and you will have very little agency in the world, and that is a difficult thing to endure. For me, the crucial thing that my characters strive towards through the novel is a collective way of life that breaks from the system. I support this myself as an idea. I wish I could live that way. But a way of succession, of leaving behind this whole system in which we live, trying to live together meaningfully as a small group where we try to provide for ourselves in some way or another. We grow our own food, we have a water supply of some sort, where we're not dependent on government money, where we're not monitored, where surveillance is something which is not going to dominate our lives, where digital IDs are not going to corral us and have us managed like stock, like a human ant farm. So that's something my characters struggle against through the whole novel. That's the ultimate horror for them. And for me, the danger is that universal basic income will be just this, a way of managing stock.
That is, this is something I didn't want to gloss over, because you're absolutely right, especially because in the current power structure, the asymmetric power structure is really the issue. If other people were in charge, I would argue that there is a better chance, but the technocrats are already in charge. So if they get their finger on the UBI button, you're probably right that it will come to this. Jamanki actually says universal basic inflation. I don't think inflation necessarily is the issue, but he says, as the Romans called it, bread and circuses. That's certainly true. Covery says here, we swear we'll never become our parents, and then we do helicoptering over our kids. And then lastly, before this excerpt, I think what you're describing also, Lars, as a possible way to organize society, is that similar to the concept of a temporary autonomous zone, which I learned about 2 weeks ago when Jonathan Lethem was on here. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept. That was
sure, yeah. That's Hakim Bey. Yeah,
Hakim
sure.
Bey.
These ideas of setting up some sort of small world of your own outside of conventional society. I'm particularly interested in a group of French anarchists called the Invisible Committee. So the Invisible Committee, these guys are a collective. They publish books every few years, and I was very much thinking of the Invisible Committee when writing this novel. And that's where the characters move towards, is an idea of an anarchist collective towards the end of the novel. That music points a direction to them. The direction in which music points them is very different to the way in which music pointed, say, for example, Wagner or Richard Strauss. For these figures, what was important was a cultural renewal of Germany through music. Whereas for my characters, music is a clue to a communal form of living, but through which you leave society in some sense. And the music that my characters love is often linked to the genuine attempt to form communes, different kinds of communal life, to break away from life as we know it in our convention, in our technocratic world.
I agree with you, except for the heavy metal subgenre stoner metal, because I just think that stoners are not reliable and they just don't show up on time. But that's another story. Let's read from the band practice. This is a band practice passage, and this is another really enjoyable part of this book, is the way you describe them, the band finding their style. I mean, this is so well written, how you describe them sort of experimenting with different musical structures and with layering and with textures. So please go ahead. What are we hearing now?
Yeah, okay. So one of the great things about writing a novel about music is, you can try to help your readers imagine the kind of music that's being produced. So in the novel, there's about 8 different descriptions of the music the band plays, and each time there's a shift, there's a change. You think they're playing one kind of music, but actually they're playing another kind of music. To begin with, they're playing doom metal, and doom metal is slow, sludgy music based on the slower elements of Black Sabbath's first 6 albums. It's very introverted, it's very melancholy, it emphasizes sub-frequencies, minor key melodies. The lyrics are focused on madness and the occult. So this is a music which is also very slow. People often talk about ambient metal. It's very heavily
It's actually very
distorted.
cool. I actually really didn't know about this genre. This was completely
Yeah.
amazing. There's a band called Sleep. It's pretty cool. I mean,
Oh, they're great.
so a lot of instrumental stuff as well, and very
Absolutely.
Black Sabbath. I mean, it's really Black Sabbath for sort of the current times.
And if you go to these gigs, they're very ritualistic. The music is hypnotic. It's almost religious in the way it works. And it reflects the
Yeah,
influence
because
of.
everybody is stoned. I'm not a fan. I'm a Frank Zappa guy. Frank Zappa was
Sure.
against. You have a Frank Zappa connection. Zappa was against drugs, and so am I. I'm not going to go to a stoner metal concert. Lars, are you kidding? Let's go when the pandemic
Sure.
is over. We'll both go, and you'll show me you'll give me a tour.
Sure. Well, that's the world of doom. So my characters move on from doom. They move through dub reggae. Dub reggae is very broken. It's unfinished. It's very disorientating. It's very thickly textured. The music, the elements of sound float above this elemental throbbing bass pattern. And they move towards what we might think of as cosmic music, kosmische music, German music, the open-ended improvisational music of Can and other bands, West German bands of the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I think about the band later on in the novel, that's what they sound like to me. They sound like these great West German bands who break away from song structures, they break away from the blues scale, they draw on electronic music, they draw on avant-garde composition, they make use of synthesizers, tape music techniques, they build musical collages. So that's how you think of the music in the book. And here's an excerpt describing a band practice. Band practice. Band telepathy. No need to speak. No need for discussion. Just lock in. Just play. Thick chords. Off harmonies. Washes of electrostatic. Descending chords. 5/4, then 6/4. Building it slowly like an Indian rag. Ominousness. Ebbs, flows. The volume rising, the wave building, dissipating, another wave, more dissipating, and Nietzsche muttering, speech singing just behind the beat, on its tail, repeated phrase, midnight bell, repeated phrase, tarantula's revenge, repeated phrase, well of eternity, Nietzsche's speech song, Nietzsche's song trance, Nietzsche's divinatory whisper, Nietzsche half singing, Nietzsche nearly singing. It's as though he were tuning into something, as though he had picked up a signal, as though he were replaying something that had begun long before and will continue long after. Nietzsche making distance audible, Nietzsche giving the infinitesimal a voice. Nietzsche's speech song like a rumor passing through a crowd, like a radio talking to itself. Nothing is said, nothing important. Nothing is meant. Speech for no one in particular, speaking of nothing in particular. Speech for the sake of itself, which is to say, for nothing in particular. Vocalese, glossolalia, nonsense syllables right down in the mix, like a Hare Krishna chant, like a mantra for a new religion. Mers marimba, half distortion, half glide, wavering between tone and noise, wandering between pitch and noise, arts electronic sounds, buzzing, zinging, arts electronics fog, super soft sound, microscopic, ocean Arcadia, warm marimba pulses, warm laptop beeps, ocean warm synth, upper waters synth, sun-warmed, balmy, blue in blue waters, light on the wave crests, the waves working, the waves rocking, all things born, all things accepted, all things shining, all life, all death. God is not dead, death is not dead, life is alive and so is death. We're living life, we're dying life. We will be born again. We will wake up again. We'll drink from the Godhead. We'll scoop light from the Godhead. We'll sip the wine of the Godhead as the skies split open.
Big round of applause. This is Lars Iyer reading from Nietzsche and the Burbs, and this is just amazing. I mean, I hope that this I anybody musically inclined reading this book, I want. I mean, if I had the time, I would do it right now. I would just write a whole album based on this. Especially the fact that you have Merv playing marimba is really cool. I mean, the rest is sort of a regular, band, bass, guitar, drums, and such. But the marimba, and then also Nietzsche, the way you describe his vocal stylings is just is superb. I mean, did you have you have some musical talent, weren't you? You told me that you played Zappa's Uncle Meat.
Well, I have no talent at
Badly.
all. I have the opposite of talent. I was so bad at music that it gave me a great appreciation for people who are good at music. I'm so atrocious at this. But when I was at school, we had a band, and we were very influenced by the Mothers of Invention, Frank Zappa's early outfit, and in particular Uncle Meat, and the way in which it combined spoken word stuff with improvisational stuff. This is something we tried to replicate, but of course we couldn't because it's very hard. And Frank Zappa is really brilliant at this sort of thing. But you mentioned the speech singing of Nietzsche. And
I mean, that's really essential. I mean, there's a lot. Actually, you know what came to my mind is the William Shatner albums. I actually love them. I don't know if people are aware of the William Shatner albums where he basically speaks. There is one from the 70s, and there is another one that it's just like a few years ago. Yeah.
Sure, I know those albums, but the kind of thing I was thinking of here was Damo Suzuki, who was the vocalist for the band Can. And if you listen to this, there's a very, very good album called Future Days by Can. And that is behind a lot of the later rehearsals in band practice in the book. I'm thinking of Future Days. And what you find in Damo Suzuki is a whispering speech singing. It's close to a murmur. It drifts in and out of silence. It's like a kind of mist. It's like a spray. It's another element of the shimmering texture of the music. It's one more texture. So what's important here is not what Damo Suzuki is actually singing. It's really the syllables that he's voicing. It's the way in which his song weaves in and out as one texture among others. There's also another very interesting artist whose work is very, very important to me. And this artist records under the name of Gendeck. I really recommend checking out Gendeck's vast oeuvre. And Gendeck has a recording called Glasgow Monday, not to be confused with Glasgow Monday 2005. This is Glasgow Monday, a double CD, and it has a wonderful speech song over piano suite. It's really, really beautiful. I mean, it really is wonderful. Very tremulous speech song. So that's the kind of thing I was thinking of here, where the vocals are only part of a tapestry of sound. They're one element of the music. And it's not really about lyrics. It's not really about conventional rock structure at all.
Here I'm bringing up and put that into the local chat. Gendeck is an American lo-fi music project headed by Sterling Smith. Here's some information, and if you want, you can sit back down. We're racing towards the finish line. We can always go a few minutes over, but we have the privilege of then having you till the bottom of the hour for in-world only. The sort of the VIP question and answer period of the program. We can hold the reading of this from the Spurious trilogy until later, until the post game. But so I want to in the last few remaining minutes, I do want to ask you the question that was amazing to me when we first met. You told me that you do not have a computer or a phone at home. Please elaborate. This is amazing. I mean, I'm struggling with this. I have a very sort of regimented way of dealing with this to create, these pockets of solitude and quietness. But I also work on audiovisual stuff, and so I have to have these things. And I wish sometimes I would have this whole apartment with absolutely no electronics. So how do you live your life? How do you resist the attention economy and the digital madness?
Well, it's part of the same thing of trying to escape management and the way in which we manage and exploit ourselves. So I don't have a mobile phone of any kind. I simply won't go near mobile phones. And at home, I would only use a computer if I absolutely have to. And I don't watch TV. I don't watch any mainstream media. I can't stand mainstream media. It's part of the technocracy. So for me, mainstream media is something to be avoided at all costs. So, I come into the office here, I work at the university, and this is where I use the computer. But otherwise, I try not to at all. My novels are written longhand. I use a computer as little as possible in the writing of novels. So my ideal world of escaping from society would be to turn my back on technology. In my house, we don't have central heating. We use an old stove. Well, we have a stove that powers that we cook on, but also that we use to heat the house as well. We have single glazing, so we feel the seasons in the house. We have a very old house, and the wind comes through it. When in winter it's really cold, in summer it gets kind of hot. So that's the way we try to live. I want to try and if I can, leave society.
Hmm. I find this so incredibly inspiring, Lars. You have no idea. I mean, I've tried different things with the phone jail thing. I have the boxes, but really there is no way around. And your story, I think, illustrates for anyone just by what you just said, and having you here, that you can be connected to people if you wish. You can be intellectually engaged with the world, but you don't have to be um, a puppet on the string of the puppet master, which is the global corporate folks that try to keep you on the leash and constantly keep you distracted from everything.
That's exactly it.
I mean, I
I'm a
guess
prince.
I mean, you're a functioning human being. I just really want to drive home this point to people who are listening. You're a functioning human being. You teach at the university. You get your stuff done, your administrative task, whatever. You are engaged. You are tech savvy at the same time, and you are resisting manipulation. And there's something I mention almost every week, that some people I think still don't realize: the algorithmically driven social media engines are terrible. I mean, TV is terrible. We all agree, but also the big social media companies, where the algorithm drives engagement, and the way we interact is pretty bad. The one thing that is fantastic, among other things, about Second Life is that there is no algorithm telling us what to do here. It's just a means of a space where we can do whatever we want. So
Sure, I mean, there's a way to engage with technology as well. I mean, as a writer, I come out of the blogging world. That the blogging allowed me
yeah.
to write fiction. So there's a way to engage with technology, which is creative and interesting. I'm sure that's something you people here will know much more about than I would. But there's a
No,
way to do
this
it.
has also shifted. I mean, there's a lot of very critical, and Cory Doctorow is coming on in a couple of weeks, and I want to ask him about it, because there's also, I mean, the powers that be have taken that over, and commodified the wonderful blogging as well. I mean, the whole Substack, and I don't want to get into it because, uh, God, we're out of time, and this is an interesting subject, because Substack and Medium, these things are highly problematic, and they put us
Yeah.
into also basically we're in hamster wheels, and and it's sold to us as being, having agency and being flexible, and it's just not the case.
Yeah, there's a very interesting woman working in the States right now, Alison McDowell, I think she's called Alison McDowell, and she does all kinds of interesting research into technocracy, and she's particularly good on education and what they're doing with the lives of the poor people, people who are poor, people who are refugees. They're trying out all these new ways of gathering data on children. And they're actually pioneering new models of investment where you invest in the lives of the poor in terms of the outcomes that can be predicted for the poor. And this
Oh
is
boy.
something absolutely chilling to read about. So I think her name is Alison McDowell. And what I love about Alison McDowell, she's not based at a university. She's not based in a think tank. She's an ordinary person who started doing research. I find her a very inspiring person. I really hope I got her name right. I've only
I'm
started
looking
reading
it
her in
up.
the
I
last two
can't
weeks.
find it right now.
Yeah. Okay. So
How do you
um,
spell the last name? Oh,
let me try and
find
get that because she's a really important person. I think Alison McDowell is the name I have here. Yes, Alison McDowell. That is the woman. She is a really fascinating person. She has done a lot of long form videos. She's very good on computer games. My favorite thing is when you listen to her on education. It's a
Mhm.
revelation. It's a revelation to me what the big tech companies are planning for young kids, removing them entirely from the classroom, having
Mm,
everything mediated electronically. But worst of all is having their data as something which can be invested in. You know,
absolutely.
people are going to invest in data, and even in prisons, people in prison, the data on people in prison is going to be used as an investment opportunity for people. It's quite extraordinary.
This is thank you, Lars, for mentioning this, and because this also gives me ideas to put panels together, because especially in the medium that we are in this digital virtual medium, where we need to really talk about this much more in a critical fashion, because this is also a much different um, audience here. So thank you so much, Lars. I'm going to go quickly through our credit slides here. Thank you so much for coming, and we have you until the bottom of the hour for the post game. The last question is to you and also the audience. Please do type it in. Here we have it, Alison McDowell. Please do type it in. What are you reading right now, audience? Um, Put it in the chat. And Lars, what are you reading? Do you have time
Well,
reading for pleasure?
I'm going to recommend you another wonderful, wonderful book. It just came out this year. It's by an author called David Cayley. I'll put that in the chat right now. David Cayley is a very interesting man, and it's a book about a great contemporary thinker, David Cayley, and that thinker is called Ivan Illich. And if there was ever a thinker for our times, Ivan Illich is it. He was very famous in the 70s. What David Cayley, what he's done is it's one eight. It's one. Okay, yeah. So what David Cayley has done is written a 400-page book which really introduces and contextualizes all of Illich's ideas. Illich himself is not always an easy read, but he's a very, very profound and wonderful thinker. And if you want to think more about leaving society, about forming new kinds of community, Illich gives you very, very practical advice as to how you might go about this. He diagnoses the world. He tells you how you might get out of the world. So Illich for me, and that book by David Cayley, this is really so apposite, so perfect for our times. So I strongly recommend Cayley's book on Illich, just out.
So inspiring. Thank you so much, Lars. Incredibly inspiring. I'm going to run through the credits here. We Our show is of course every Wednesday, 12 o'clock, Second Life time. Please get in touch with us, slbookclub@draxtor.com, with recommendations, or with recommendations of books, and also recommendations of guests. The show is produced by Strawberry Linden, Shyla the Super Gecko. She is not with us. She is in the hospital, but she is doing good. I just spoke to her earlier. And myself, the location manager and master builder, is Ruby Geek. Ruby, big thank you, big round of applause. Matter of fact, there is a tip jar in the corner. It's my dragon sculpture made by Silas, and you can tip that dragon sculpture if you have Linden shekels in your pocket. Throw them in there. Speaking of avatars, the avatars are built from scratch sometimes, especially today, by Silas Merlin. Sometimes they're customized by Kralos. Special thanks, Marianne McCann, Arden Schwartzman, AJ McDowell, Theanine, Brett Patch, and all the moles over there at Linden Lab. And yeah, we have a calendar, we have a Discord, we have a Flickr. They're scattered around the islands. Please do take photos. Again, the ideas critique slbookclub@draxtor.com. And please do spread the word to book lovers all over the grid. And the guests, please spread the word to those skeptics of technology, and that's very legitimate skepticism that is out there that I oftentimes agree with. But tell them that here you can be a realistic head with a chaotic body. Next week we have Roseanne A. Brown. It's a debut author, New York Times bestselling author, a first generation American from Ghana, and a big epic fantasy piece that talks a lot about the same issues that we talked about today. So this is always interesting to look at these issues through the lens of the fantasy genre. So that's Roseanne A. Brown. Next week, right here on the Second Life Book Club.